Chonos from Chiloe. These islands will, in all probability, in a short time, become peopled, like those adjoining the coast of Chiloe. The wild potato grows on these islands in great abundance, on the sandy, shelly soil near the sea beach. The tallest plant was 4 feet in height. The tubers were generally small, but I found one of an oval shape 2 inches in diameter. They resembled in every aspect, and had the same smell, as English potatoes, but when boiled they shrunk much, and were watery and insipid, without any bitter taste. They are undoubtedly here indigenous. They grow as far south, according to Mr. Lowe, as latitude 50 degrees, and are called Aquians by the wild Indians of that part. The Chilotan Indians have a different name for them. Professor Henslow, who has examined the dried specimens which I brought home, says that they are the same with those described by Mr. Sabine from Valparaiso, but that they form a variety which, by some botanists, have been considered as specifically distinct. Note: Horticultural Transact, Volume 5, page 249. Mr. Calderlew sent home 2 tubers, which, being well manured, even the first season produced numerous potatoes and an abundance of leaves. See Humboldt's interesting discussion on this plant, which it appears was unknown in Mexico, in Political Essay on New Spain, Book 4, Chapter 9. It is remarkable that the same plant should be found on the sterile mountains of central Chile, where a drop of rain does not fall for more than 6 months, and within the damp forest of these southern islands. In the central parts of the Chonos archipelago, latitude 45 degrees, the forest has very much the same character with that along the whole west coast for 600 miles southward to Cape Horn. The arborescent grass of Chiloe is not found here, while the beech of Tierra del Fuego grows to a good size, and forms a considerable proportion of the wood; not, however, in the same exclusive manner as it does farther southward. Cryptogamic plants here find a most congenital climate. In the Strait of Magellan, as I have before remarked, the country appears too cold and wet to allow of their arriving at perfection, but in these islands, within the forest, the number of species and great abundance of mosses, lichens, and small ferns is quite extraordinary. Note: By sweeping with my insect net, I procured from these situations a considerable number of minute insects of the family of Staphylinidae, and others allied to Cephalus, and minute Hymenoptera. But the most characteristic family and number, both of individuals and species, throughout the more open parts of Chiloe and Chonos, is that of Telephoridae. In Tierra del Fuego, trees grow only on the hillsides, every level piece of land being invariably covered by a thick bed of peat. But in Chiloe, flat land supports the most luxuriant forests. Here, within the Chonos archipelago, the nature of the climate more closely approaches that of Tierra del Fuego than that of northern Chiloe, for every patch of level ground is covered by 2 species of plant, Astelia pumila and Donatia magellanica, which by their joint decay compose a thick bed of elastic peat. In Tierra del Fuego, above the region of woodland, the former of these eminently sociable plants is the chief agent in the production of peat. Fresh leaves are always succeeding one to the other round the central taproot; the lower ones soon decay, and in tracing a route downward in the peat, the leaves, yet holding their place, can be observed passing through every stage of decomposition, till the whole becomes blended in one confused mass. The Astelia is assisted by a few other plants; here and there a small creeping Myrtus, M. nummularia, with a woody stem like our cranberry and with a sweet berry; an Empetrum, E. rubrum, like our heath; a rush, Juncus grandiflorus, are nearly the only ones that grow on the swampy surface. These plants, though possessing a very close general resemblance to the English species of the same genera, are different. In the more level parts of the country, the surface of the peat is broken up into little pools of water, which stand at different heights, and appear as if artificially excavated. Small streams of water, flowing underground, complete the disorganization of the vegetable matter, and consolidate the whole. The climate of the southern part of America appears particularly favourable to the production of peat. In the Falkland Islands almost every kind of plant, even the coarse grass which covers the whole surface of the land, becomes converted into this substance. Scarcely any situation checks its growth. Some of the beds are as much as 12 feet thick, and the lower part becomes so solid when dry that it will hardly burn. Although every plant lends its aid, yet in most parts the Astelia is the most efficient. It is rather a singular circumstance, as being so very different from what occurs in Europe, that I nowhere saw moss forming by its decay any portion of the peat in South America. With respect to the northern limit, at which the climate allows of that peculiar kind of slow decomposition which is necessary for its production, I believe that in Chiloe, latitude 41 to 42 degrees, although there is much swampy ground, no well characterized peat occurs, but in the Chonos Islands, 3 degrees farther southward, we have seen that it is abundant. On the eastern coast in La Plata, latitude 35 degrees, I was told by a Spanish resident who had visited Ireland that he had often sought for this substance, but had never been able to find any. He showed me, as the nearest approach to it which he had discovered, a black peaty soil, so penetrated with roots as to allow of an extremely slow and imperfect combustion. The zoology of these broken islets of the Chonos archipelago is, as might have been expected, very poor. Of quadrupeds 2 aquatic kinds are common. The Myopotamus coipus, like a beaver but with a round tail, is well known from its fine fur, which is an object of trade throughout the tributaries of La Plata. It here, however, exclusively frequents salt water, which same circumstance has been mentioned as sometimes occurring with the great rodent, the capybara. A small sea otter is very numerous. This animal does not feed exclusively on fish, but like the seals, draws a large supply from the small red crab, which swims in shoals near the surface of the water. Mr. Bino saw one in Tierra del Fuego eating a cuttlefish, and at Low's harbour another was killed in the act of carrying to its hole a large volute shell. At one place I caught in a trap a singular little mouse, M. brachiotus. It appeared common on several of the islets, but the Chilotans at Low's harbour said that it was not found in all. What a succession of chances, or what changes of level must have brought into play, thus to spread these small animals throughout this broken archipelago. Note. It is said that some rapacious birds bring their prey alive to their nests. If so, in the course of centuries, every now and then, one might escape from the young birds. Some such agency is necessary to account for the distribution of the smaller gnawing animals on islands not very near each other. In all parts of Chiloe and Chonos, 2 very strange birds occur, which are allied to and replace the turco and tapacolo of central Chile. One is called by the inhabitants chocao, Pteropticos rubecula. It frequents the most gloomy and retired spots within the damp forests. Sometimes, although its cry may be heard close at hand, let a person watch ever so attentively, he will not see the chocao. At other times, let him stand motionless, and the red-breasted little bird will approach within a few feet in the most familiar manner. It then busily hops about the entangled mass of rotting cones and branches, with its little tail cocked upwards. The chocao is held in superstitious fear by the Chilotans, on account of its strange and varied cries. There are 3 very distinct cries. One is called chiduco, and is an omen of good; another, huitro, which is extremely unfavourable; and a third, which I have forgotten. These words are given in imitation of the noises, and the natives are in some things absolutely governed by them. The Chilotans assuredly have chosen a most comical little creature for their prophet. An allied species, but rather larger, is called by the natives gidgid, Pteropticus tarnii, and by the English the barking bird. This latter name is well given, for I defy any one at first to feel certain that a small dog is not yelping somewhere in the forest. Just as with the chocao, a person will sometimes hear the bark close by, but in vain many endeavour by watching, and with still less chance by beating the bushes, to see the bird. Yet at other times the gidgid fearlessly comes near. Its manner of feeding and its general habits are very similar to those of the chocao. On the coast, a small dusky-coloured bird, Opetiorhynchus patagonicus, is very common. Note. I may mention, as a proof of how great a difference there is between the seasons of the wooded and the open parts of this coast, that on September 20th, in latitude 34 degrees, these birds had young ones in the nest, while among the Chonos Islands, 3 months later in the summer, they were only laying, the difference in latitude between these 2 places being about 700 miles. It is remarkable from its quiet habits. It lives entirely on the sea beach, like a sandpiper. Beside these birds, only few others inhabit this broken land. In my rough notes I describe the strange noises, which, although frequently heard within these gloomy forests, yet scarcely disturb the general silence. The yelping of the gidgid, and the sudden whew-whew of the chocao, sometimes come from far off, and sometimes from close at hand. The little black wren of Tierra del Fuego occasionally adds its cry. The creeper, Auxiores, follows the intruder, screaming and twittering. The humming bird may be seen every now and then darting from side to side, and emitting like an insect its shrill chirp. Lastly, from the top of some lofty tree, the indistinct but plaintive note of the white-tufted tyrant flycatcher, Myobius, may be noticed. From the great